self-explanatory, right? It's an area where people that use Docusign transaction rooms can interact with other folks in a transaction by email or even fax. And the reason I bring this up is I'm always shocked about how many folks in the real estate industry still use the fax machine and how integral it is to a business. And so a lot of folks will tell me how much they love having a fax machine in their pocket, since this application is built for mobile. All the people using Docusign transaction rooms can work on any device that's enabled with the internet connection. So Android, iOS, and Windows as well all work with Docusign transaction rooms, just as you're seeing here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was there a question?
Nope.
Okay. So pretty basic here. It's supposed to be as simple as possible. Our goal isn't to force the technology down your throats or the people you work with. Instead, our goal is to provide you with a variety of tools so you can work how you need to work. So if you'd like to fax within the tool or receive faxes, you can do that. Similarly, you can do it via email as well. Now, navigating to the right again, I'm going to go to the My Documents section, which, as you might gather, is a central place where we're storing all of the documents that you could be using in a transaction. There's a personal file here for individuals, but then also a business folder here where you can create different folders to help manage your day-to-day transactions. And a lot of the folks that use this tool will store everything that they're using today so that they can have easy access to it, whether they're at home, at the office, or on the go. Navigating to the transaction room here is really the meat and potatoes of the application, Nick. And what we're seeing when we click on the transaction room is all of the transactions that someone is working on today. And these are individual rooms that house specific documents and people associated to a transaction. So if we were to drill down on a specific transaction, what we're seeing here is a couple tabs. The Details tab is some high-level information about the transaction, going into some specific details as you scroll down, and then even showing a little map of it at the bottom. And then on the right here, you're noticing the transaction room activity. And so as the agent begins to work more within this room, they're seeing all that activity logged against the transaction. The reason behind it is for quality control and compliance, so that you know everything's being processed in the right manner. Now, while we're inside this room, what we're doing here is creating a template, if you will, of documents that are required for a specific transaction. And it sounds like, based on what you told me earlier, the office manager is really the individual responsible for preparing the packet of documents and sending it to the controller. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. And typically that's emailed or faxed over from the office manager to the controller?
We scan it and email it up.
Okay, perfect. So with Docusign transaction rooms, what would happen is each person that's preparing these checklists full of documents, whether they're required or optional, they're able to easily see what's required in order to complete this transaction. And so these checklists are a framework to help guide people through various transactions that you might be working on to help easily manage each transaction. Now, this line here is going to delineate between what's inside the checklist and what's inside the room, the transaction room. So when the time is right, the office manager or whomever is working on this transaction can take completed documents and drag and drop them where they need to, or even on the flip side, just click on one of these required tiles here and choose the document within inside the room. So I think based on what you've seen so far here, the office manager or whomever is going to be managing these properties will be creating a checklist that will help you create and then fill that checklist with the required and optional documents and then get that over to the controller.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we're doing that and sharing these documents with the controller is under this People tab here. So this shows all the people that are currently involved in this specific transaction, right? So you can invite people from your network of people you've already worked with in the past by just coming here and clicking Add from Network, or you can simply invite someone. So say I wanted to invite the controller in the corporate office, I would type in their name, right? I'd fill out their email address. I'd select what their role is for this specific transaction, and then what side they're working on, and then just invite them into the transaction. And then that way, once they've been added, say this is the controller, this is Shelby Davis here, I can come into her account and actually share with her all the documents that are a part of my transaction. So I can include all the documents that she needs to see and ones that maybe she doesn't need to see. Does that make sense?
Right.
Any questions around how that would work with your guys' process, Nick?
No, so well, I guess kind of. Do we set up the invites, or is that so? Say the agent puts the file together. Do they have to invite the people each time, or is it more of a streamlined way to do that?
Yeah, not necessarily, Nick. And what I mean by that is you can set permissions, and we help all of our clients do this, to allow certain folks to be automatically included into transaction rooms.
Perfect.
So it might make a lot of sense in your case to automatically have the controller have permission and oversight into every single transaction that you could be working on.
Uh-huh. Okay, and then as far as getting these documents set up in there, is that pretty simple? Is it just
I'll show you real quick.
Okay.
So I kind of went through how you can add docs from the My Documents section, but you can do it directly from a room as well by going to this Document tab here, clicking on this Add button, and then you can pull from various sources, the first being locally on your computer, but then we also work with other cloud storage systems, and our solution integrates with these solutions. Do you happen to use any other cloud storage?
We use Google Drive quite a bit.
Okay, well there you go. You'll see right there it links up with Google Drive. So we would connect your Google Drive account with your Docusign Transaction Room account. That way the two can communicate with one another, and any documents you have in Google Drive can be imported directly into a transaction room that way.
Cool.
Yeah, perfect. So that would probably be the easiest way from my perspective if you're using Google Drive a lot today. But of course, if you don't have everything in Google Drive, you can just upload it from your computer.
All right.
Okay, so Nick, I'm not going to go, since I went through the Documents in the People tab already, I'm not going to go through the Envelope tab since you're already familiar with Docusign, and I'm going to jump into what the broker side of it, if you will, where we have some management permissions in place. So I'm going to switch gears here and go to an administrative sort of view and show you how we're creating these checklists and managing company settings and permissions. So what I'm looking at here under this admin tab is my team of people. And these are all the folks that I have that's working on my transaction room accounts. And so if I need to come in here and add folks, I do it by coming up here and adding different people. Take, for instance, your controller. I would come in and add him or her as a manager, right? So type in some information for this controller, what their title is. These are customizable, so we could add in here controller for your group, and select what access levels they're going to have. So this is from top down how the controller will have visibility into these transaction rooms. So we'd give them company access so they can have oversight into all the transactions. And then scrolling down, you'll notice we have these transaction permissions. And this very top one is the one I'm referring to, where we can allow the controller to automatically be visible in every transaction room that's managed under the company level. So every time an agent or whomever is at the office creates a new transaction, the controller will be automatically added to that room and thus have insight into what's going on with that specific transaction. And then as you scroll down here more, you're seeing more permissions that we can set up for a specific individual. I won't go through each of these unless you want me to, but you can kind of see what their capabilities are.
Yeah.
Based on what you've seen so far, is that making sense with how this tool could fit into your current workflow?
Yeah.
Awesome. I will press on then. So I'm going to hop over, since I covered the member tab here and showed you what the team members look like, I'm going to go to the company tab and show you how we're setting up some of these back-end settings. Okay, so when we navigate to the company tab, we're seeing some basic information about the company. Going down, you can change your logo, of course, to customize it and give it a more personalized feel. And then navigating to the company settings tab, this is where we're really managing what's going on with specific transaction rooms. And what this is saying here is, can an agent or whomever has a Docusign transaction room account, can they delete transaction room, actual rooms or actual documents? So depending on how trustworthy you are with all the folks at the organization, you might grant them full access or perhaps deny them access if it's something you don't feel comfortable allowing them to do. You guys have more than one office here, Nick?
No, we just have one in Phoenix.
Okay, perfect. So I'll forego looking at regions and offices. This is just designed for groups that have several locations. And I'll jump down to this checklist area, which I showed earlier on how we're helping folks to better manage each transaction they work on. And what we've done, my brokerage here has created 6 different checklists, which can be applied automatically to a room once a new transaction is started. And what they look like is quite simple. You just simply add a checklist and give it a name. So whatever you want to call this transaction, I'll just call this a transaction checklist. Totally customizable for whatever you want to do. And then you add in required documents and optional documents, and you just type them in as you see fit. So take, for example, a document I see often here, let's say paint, whatever the case may be. You can come in here and type freeform, and Docusign will create those tiles that you saw to help these agents or these individuals better manage each transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the actual transaction room, and I'm going to take it from the stance that I am the controller, and I just got sent a packet from the office manager, and the office manager submitted to me a packet of documents that I need to review. So as the controller, I would come in here under this Under Review tab, and I would look at those transactions that are immediately requiring my attention, because these are the ones that folks at your office have deemed are prepared to be reviewed and submitted for approval. So I would come into a specific transaction here, and I would review all the documents in it, make sure that everything is completed and finalized. And if I take a look at this checklist, and let's just take this at face value, it looks like we're missing a couple of required documents. So the controller might say, well, I can't approve this transaction yet because the checklist has yet to be satisfied. So the controller would come up to this Action tab after reviewing these documents, and they'd say, well, I'm going to reject this transaction because we are missing several required documents, right? So then I would reject this transaction, at which point it's going to go back to the office manager or whoever originated and submitted this transaction for approval and let them know that we're missing several required documents, so there needs to be a little work done in order to satisfy the checklist. Now, let's take it on the other side and say, well, maybe the controller is looking at this property and remembers that this specific transaction doesn't require all these documents, right? This is only meant to be a guide. It's not the end-all, be-all for submitting a transaction or approving a transaction. So the controller might say, well, these are all the documents I need for this property. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. So when they approve a transaction, it goes through as a fully submitted and executed opportunity, and it'll be stored for data mining later, and so you can kind of record on and report from that data that we're storing in your Docusign transaction room account. that make sense?
Yeah.